Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And I'm Dan and I am AutoTrader's road test editor.
And today, Dan, you're going to have to bring back your truck voice because we're talking all about trucks.
Trucks, let's do it. Truck stuff.
I need you to pretend like you're in one of those truck commercials, like
I'm channeling.
Hard-working.
I'm channeling like if I were one of the Elmers. For those of you who don't know, friends of the show, Howard and Stephen Elmer from Truck King. Good guys. But if I were like an honorary Elmer, I'd be like, let's talk trucks.
We're talking trucks today.
And as soon as I said the voice, I would like spontaneously get the handlebar mustache like Howard. It would just appear. My beard would dissolve and it would turn into the form of a handlebar.
It's like method acting. I really like it.
Totally.
So obviously, like, Canadians love their trucks. The Ford F-150 is consistently the top-selling vehicle in the whole country year after year after year.
But we should also point out that's always like it's still the best seller, right? But by the numbers, like most automakers, like it's retail sales, but then with stuff like trucks, you're gonna group fleet into there
sales,
so that it's like, so it definitely makes it doesn't change the fact that they're so popular, but it's definitely like a little bit of a, like a little trickiness going on there.
Yeah, and so this trickiness is something we'll touch on throughout the episode because we think that this is deserving of a demystification. There's a lot of stuff about trucks that are complicated and a little bit confusing, so we're going to try to outline all of that and talk about...
You know what's complicated and confusing to me?
What?
Why people love trucks so much.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people need trucks. A lot of people don't need trucks, which is true. Yeah, it's also one of the most searched vehicles on the AutoTrader marketplace. Like every single year we've been tracking this. I think it's been 7 years. It's been the #1 most searched vehicle. And so, like, trucks are popular. Canadians really love their trucks. And the market is very different now than it was even like 5 years ago. It's very, very different. So we're going to go through that a little bit. We're going to be talking about tips on buying trucks, what to look for. If you're new to trucks, we're going to go through the different types of trucks you could buy. So it's going to be a truck episode.
And I was just last night, I got back from the first of my annual camping trips this year, and I did it in a truck.
Cool.
And it was the Hyundai Santa Cruz.
Love
and before any of you out there listening start, your blood pressure starts to boil over, I'm going to level with you. The Hyundai Santa Cruz is absolutely a truck, and I'm going to double down.
Get ready.
And say it's a really good one.
I love the Hyundai Santa Cruz. So, like, when I drove it, I absolutely loved it because it drove like a crossover.
Yeah.
Didn't require any adjustment to my lifestyle. I could fit anywhere. There's some, like, parking garages and spaces downtown Toronto I will not take a half-ton to because I will not be able to fit.
Yeah, and if we do want to talk about truck stuff and doing truck stuff, like, for my friends and I, we do kind of backwoods camping, so it's narrow access trails to get back to this one spot that we've been going to for years, and doing it in a bigger vehicle is a little bit precarious. It's a little bit, nerve-wracking, especially if it's a press tester. I don't want to scratch it. Mm-hmm. So doing it in the Santa Cruz took all of that stress away.
Yeah.
But then, it's still got all-wheel drive. It's still got terrain modes because, like, this isn't exactly an easy place to get to. And having that Santa Cruz was amazing.
Because it just fits, and it's so practical. So, like, let's back up a little bit.
Yes.
Let's just define truck, because a lot of traditional truck people don't think that trucks like the Santa Cruz are, quote, real trucks.
Because they get upset that it's unibody instead of body on frame.
And so so when you look in the definition, or look in the dictionary for what defines a truck, it is a vehicle with an open cargo area.
Santa Cruz has that.
Santa Cruz has that. And that's literally all you need to be a truck.
Well, I think, and I do understand that whole thing. Well, it's got to be tough and rugged and whatever. But, like, let's also not forget that cars used to be body on frame.
and they were terrible.
But I just mean, like, you know, the whole thing that a truck, you know, that's what defines it as a truck, is like, this is just evolution. The auto industry, you know, is very much about that.
Yeah,
Things
definitions will change through time. And so this kind of brings us into our first topic, which is defining the different types of trucks. So trucks like the Hyundai Santa Cruz, the Honda Ridgeline, the Ford Maverick, those are all what's called crossover-based compact trucks.
Well, technically, the Ridgeline is a midsize.
Oh, it's a midsize.
Just like a Ranger or a Tacoma.
Okay, but it's the whole point is that it's built on a crossover platform and not a body-on-frame traditional platform.
Which makes it, yes, it's not quite as capable in terms of like towing and payload and stuff, but it's, like you said, way more comfortable because it doesn't have that frame that it's going to be all rigid and kind of rickety.
So it's a lot more comfortable to drive, a lot more easy to maneuver.
Yes.
They're better on gas.
Yes.
And they still offer a lot of that same practicality that those big half-ton trucks offer.
I am such a big proponent, because payload is another one, you know, that it doesn't change that much. Unless you're buying like a contractor grade, you know, pickup truck, you're looking at the same kind of in the 12 to 1,800 pounds of payload range. In the case of the Santa Cruz, it can tow 5,000 pounds. I haven't towed that much with it, but I've towed with the Santa Cruz, and it does just fine. It's got a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It's got tons of torque. It's amazing.
I love the Santa Cruz.
And the Ridgeline, too, is really good.
And even the Ford Maverick.
The Maverick is cool. I can't wait to drive. I still haven't driven the hybrid, and that's like high on my list of vehicles that I want to drive.
The Ford Maverick hybrid is really good. I had a brief test with it in the winter at some point. I think I was like one of the first people in the country to drive it. But I was getting like...
Wow, what a flex.
I know.
Guys, I'm Jodi Lai. I got to drive this first, and it was, you know...
But I was getting like, I think 5.9 liters per 100 kilometers for a truck.
Really good.
And I know it was like a short test, but it was on winter tires, and it was during a snow day. So I was taking it a little bit light, but like still, to get that kind of fuel economy for a truck is wild.
That's what, you know, and I remember, so that was one thing, like I've talked to people about it before, and my personal feeling is like the fact that currently Ford doesn't offer the Maverick hybrid with all-wheel drive is a bit of a disappointment. So I reached out to Ford about it, and the quote I got back was, you know, there's nothing from a design and engineering perspective stopping Ford from offering all-wheel drive, because the powertrain is the same as the Escape hybrid,
which comes with all-wheel drive.
You can get it with all-wheel drive. It's like $1,000, and it's a mechanical system, because like Toyota with its hybrids, we went over this in episode 2, I believe, but you can go back and listen to it if you didn't catch it already, that Toyota uses an electric all-wheel drive system in its hybrids, so it's a separate electric motor in the back. With Ford, with the Escape hybrid, it's a mechanical all-wheel drive system, just like the gas-powered version. So it's very easy to accommodate that in the Maverick packaging.
I bet it's coming.
I wouldn't be surprised. He said it's just a matter of demand, and I'm sure if you asked, you know, a Maverick shopper, like, they would say, yes, 100%, that's what I want.
I mean, the take-up rate in Canada for all-wheel drive is like really, really high, right? Yeah. I don't remember the exact number, but it's high.
Granted, this is more about premium brands, but like most in the States, you still get a lot of vehicles that are offered in, you know, front or rear wheel drive, and all-wheel drive is optional, whereas in Canada, it's just straight all-wheel drive, because that's what people want. Yeah,
because our weather sucks, right? In California, you never get bad weather, so you would never need all-wheel drive.
I think there's a certain sense that, you know, there's like that, and we can get into it in terms of trucks, a false sense of security that comes with stuff like that, and you know, that's part of that whole, well, bigger and I'm safer, but then, you know, the next truck that comes out is just going to be bigger than that, and it's that constant one-upmanship.
Yeah.
And bigger doesn't mean safer.
That's very true. That's one of the things we'll demystify later. But also, there's a lot there that we need to unpack.
But yeah, we'll jump back. So mid-size trucks are still body on frame, just like a full size. It's just they're smaller. So like the Jeep Gladiator, Toyota Tacoma, which has been the best-selling mid-size truck forever.
Yep.
The Nissan Frontier, the Ford Ranger, Chevrolet Colorado, GMC Canyon. I think that's the whole.
Yeah, there's not a whole bunch of them.
No. But it's better than it was. Remember, recession, a lot of tough decisions. The Ranger went away.
Yeah.
The Dodge Dakota went away. There were no more Chevy S10 and GMC Sonoma, I think it was called back then.
Wow.
And then they slowly started coming back.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why they came back, and part of the reason why these compact trucks, all of a sudden, there's so many of them, where like 5 years ago there were almost none.
Yeah.
Except the Ridgeline, I think, was the only one.
The Ridgeline for a while was like, in the Tacoma and Frontier, of course, like those. But in terms of like, you know, the GM got rid of theirs. Back then, Chrysler Corp got rid of the Dakota, and yeah, they just like had to again make tough decisions, and you know, they weren't like fuel economy wise. I remember my buddy had a Dakota, and it was worse on gas than back then a Dodge Ram 1500, like an equivalent.
Really?
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with half-ton trucks getting so big, and automakers realize that there's like really no price cap to how much you can charge people for half-ton trucks, because they'll shell out the money. And so for the rest of us who, you know, can't afford them, there were not many options, which is why these compact trucks started coming out, which is why these mid-size ones became more popular. Again, they offer a lot of the same pros as the half-ton trucks, a little bit less capability, but you still get all that practicality. You still get an open bed. You still get all-wheel drive if you want it.
Yeah.
And so it's a really great option. But yeah, full-size trucks are what most people think of when we talk about trucks. Stuff like the F-150, the Dodge Ram,
well,
the
Ram
Chevy
1500 now.
Yeah, sorry, I called it the Dodge. It hasn't been called a Dodge
Somebody's
Ram in a
gonna
long
be
time.
like, well, if you can't dodge it, ram it. Remember that?
Oh my God.
The worst slogan of all time.
Oh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
I completely blocked that out of my memory because
With
it was
good
so
reason,
bad.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
But yeah, luckily, like, the truck market is a lot more open to
and
people.
it's changed, and like you said, it's just, there's no price cap. Like, the, you know, automakers are like, oh, you're willing to spend 6 figures on a pickup truck?
I mean, that Ram that you drove not too long ago, tell us about that one.
Yeah, it was a Ram 1500 GT. That's the package. It was built on the Sport. So it was like, I think the 4th of 7 trims or something, if you don't count the TRX, which I don't. That's like a specialty vehicle. But in terms of like the kind of regular Ram 1500 lineup, that's like directly in the middle of the lineup. And with the options, it was $92,000. And I'm going to go a little further, and I'm not here to dunk on Ram, but this weekend, that camping trip, my friends and I were driving up through Bancroft, Ontario. There is a Chrysler dealership right on the main drag, and we drove by, and there were something like 8 Ram 1500 Classics. So basically, demand is high enough, and the money being made off these trucks is so astronomical that there is the kind of the current generation Ram, and then also Ram Trucks produces the previous generation, and it's just called the Ram Classic.
Yeah.
So it's modern amenities and everything. It just has the older body style.
And they're selling them side by side.
Yes. And the 8 vehicles, the 8 Ram Classics that were parked out front, they were all 2022s. The average, and they looked kind of like, you know, pretty low tier in terms of equipment. The average price in the windshield, this is including incentives, was $65,000. I'm sorry, but the average transaction price in Canada, it's just over $40,000. So you've got to pay $25,000 more to get a truck with like cloth seats, you know, maybe heated front seats, maybe a heated steering wheel,
lucky.
but not like a ton of amenities. You're paying luxury vehicle money. And here's what I always say to people. And yes, obviously you guys are going to, you know, get the sense that it's not that I don't like trucks. It's just I think that they're a little bit unnecessary for most people. Here's the question I would pose to you. If I were to say, hey, okay, you're looking at, you know, the Chevy Silverado, you know, and would you consider a minivan? You've got kids. No way, I'd never drive a minivan. And then if you would say, hey, would you buy a Suburban instead? No, I don't need all that room. But it's like the Suburban, it's the same platform. It's just an enclosed version of a Silverado.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I don't understand this disconnect. I have friends who are, you know, contractors. I get it. That totally makes sense. If you're like big into outdoor stuff, if you've, you know, maybe got a cottage or whatever, there are lots of reasons. But I know a lot of people who own pickup trucks, and it's just silly.
And because a lot of people who own pickup trucks don't need a pickup truck, and it's because this notion that like owning a pickup truck became a status symbol in itself. And so now for a lot of people who don't necessarily want like a BMW or like, you know, one of those traditional status symbol vehicles, you go and buy yourself a big honking truck because it tells people that like I made it, because trucks are expensive.
You see those guys with the trucks that say like dirty hands, clean money on the back? And it's like, it's just a flex of like, look at, you know, I did this, and I get it, good for you, but it's also like they're unnecessary. Like you said, they're big, they're difficult to park. You've always got to park at the end of the aisle at the grocery store because you can't fit up front.
I mean, like I know people who literally go to a cottage twice a year, and they use that to justify their purchase of a truck. And to me, and this leads kind of into our next segment, is that if you're considering a truck, just be really honest with yourself on how you'll use it. You know, if you're one of those people who will tow once, I know people who own trucks who have never even loaded it up, never towed it with anything. Yeah. But if you go to a cottage twice a year and you need more space, rent something for that time, because you'll end up saving so much more money.
And even like I remember a friend of mine, had bought a house, and the little kind of, it wasn't like a full garage, but it had this little, garagey type thing attached to the side of the house. And the previous owners had left some stuff in there that he took to the dump. So it was like literally one dump run. And he was like, I think I'm going to get a Tacoma. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, like with going to the dump, this house reno stuff. And I'm like, but you did that once.
Yeah.
And your parents own a truck.
So just
borrow it. Or it's like he had a Crosstrek at the time. You could put a little utility trailer on the back of that thing. It can tow like 1,500 pounds. That's all you need for these dump runs. It's just this illogical, like you're buying something for that one time that you're doing it. And to me, it's like, a very expensive version of being like, I'm going on a casual bike ride, so I'm going to like get all geared up in all my equipment. It's like, no, you're silly. Yeah, okay, the serious ones, you buy like this big expensive carbon road bike and all the equipment, and you want to look like Lance Armstrong, but you're not going to do that to like commute to work. It's overkill.
Yeah, it's more of a flex, like you say, than anything else. And like certainly a lot of people do use their trucks, and they use them hard. Yes. And like that's why they exist. But I think if you're new to trucks and you might be considering buying yourself a big truck, just be really honest with yourself about what you'll use it for and how often you'll use it in that way.
And I'm like, back in the day, I'm guilty of it too. I owned a 2002 Ford F-150, and I, was really excited about it. And then it felt really, unnecessary. It was, terrible on gas. I didn't really use it for what it was made for. So I sold it because I was like, this is silly.
Yeah. And then you realize that it can become more of a headache than a help.
And I honestly don't know. Like, I mean, this is one of those things. I'm sure we'll get some, some grumpy comments too. But email us at expert@trader.ca. I want to know. Like, tell me why. And we're not here to like shame you individually. I'm genuinely curious why you own a truck. Just explain what the justification was for you personally to be like, we were shopping for a vehicle and landed on an F-150 or whatever. Because the other thing I will say is that trucks, in my opinion, aren't very practical for family life. Because sure, it's got a back seat just like any other vehicle, but if you're going somewhere, where do you put your stuff? Let's say you go to Costco with the kids, and it's like family of 4, Saturday outing to Costco, you got to put all your stuff in the back. And sure, you might have like a tonneau cover or a cap, but like it's not completely dry, completely secure from the elements. So it's because every time you see somebody in a truck at the grocery store, what are they doing? They're putting their grocery bags in the back seat.
Yeah, and that's something that I had to do as well. Like, it's different with the Santa Cruz because it has that retractable tonneau cover that comes standard, which I love. But recently I was driving a Ford Ranger, and I had 4 people in there. It didn't have a cover on the back. And so they had to sit there with all of my stuff. Yeah. Which is not a great way to roll, right?
No,
it's not very
she lost 3 friends that day.
They were my boyfriend and his kids. So
never again. Dad, we're not going out with Jodi ever again. She makes us carry her belongings, and
Mission accomplished then. It worked out in my favor.
Well, my thing is just that is the prime example of like, you know, it's like we think of practicality as utility, and it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
Because if you look at like my hatchback, for example, I can fit tons of stuff back there. I could do dump runs in my Volkswagen Golf.
100%.
And maybe I need to do 2 trips. That's fine by me because that's a lot more affordable than me going out to buy a truck that'll only use once a year.
Yeah, and especially with gas prices being what they are right now.
Brutal right now.
Yeah, okay, this is one of those things, and I think we got an Ask an Expert question about this, so I don't want to like totally step on it, but it's like, you know, don't buy something. This is what happened when gas prices dropped.
Yeah.
And people went, oh man, gas is so cheap, I'm going to buy a truck. And now gas is so expensive. My buddy, he constantly messages us with pain. You can like feel the pain in the group chat when it's like, you know, I saw this morning it was like $2.02 a liter in a 130 liter gas tank.
That's going to cost you like $200 to fill up.
$270 to fill the tank of a truck that you might make it 600 kilometers.
Yeah, and so with gas prices being as high as they are now, I think the interest in like alternative powertrain trucks is becoming more and more.
Good thing they're coming.
Yeah, and so like
F-150 Lightning.
F-150 Lightning is coming. Chevrolet Silverado EV is coming.
Ram 50. I don't think the name has been announced yet, but there's an electric Ram on the way.
The Hummer EV
is here in Silly.
The Rivian is coming.
RT1.
I saw Rivian in Toronto this weekend. Someone drove it up from Texas, I think.
My friend,
so cool.
when we were camping, was asking me about it and was like, "Would you buy one?" And I said, like, I need to see more of them because right now I'm worried about the longevity of that brand.
Yeah, that's true. But you also don't need a truck. Well,
no, but that's one electrification is that. I still think they're silly because it's like that. Now the Rivian, it's a little smaller. It kind of falls a little closer to the midsize.
It did look a lot smaller in person than I had pictured it.
So, but it's if you're talking about like the F-150 Lightning, it's still big, so it's still going to be difficult to maneuver, downtown, harder to park. But at least it's burning electricity. Electrons and not gasoline. Yeah. There's no harmful emissions to worry about.
And even if you weren't ready to take the step into a full EV truck, there's hybrid trucks too. So the F-150 comes with a hybrid. It's fantastic.
It's really good.
The Toyota Tundra comes as a hybrid now.
I've not yet driven that one, but some of the early results I've seen is that the fuel economy isn't that good.
In the Toyota? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I'd be a little disappointed if I bought a Tundra.
Very interesting. But talk to us about the F-150 hybrid because you've spent time with it and you loved it. I have
quite a bit, yeah. And so I put something like 1,000, 1,200 kilometers on one last year.
You took it camping, right?
Yeah, and it was really good. I averaged like 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers, which, any truck owner out there knows that's really good.
That's really good. For a half-ton truck, that's amazing.
Yeah, and this was, again, combined, and this was camping and, had it in four-wheel high and, needed to do some truck stuff with it, enough to be it affected the fuel economy. But I averaged 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers, and it has one of my favorite features in a vehicle in general, which is an onboard inverter.
This might be the 4th time Dan has mentioned this feature on the podcast.
I'm trying to get it into every episode. So you can get it with the gas-only F-150, but you can only get a small one, and it's 2.7 kilowatts. With the hybrid, it comes with that, but then you can upgrade it to a 7.2 kilowatt inverter.
So good.
So in my video, which you can watch on the AutoTrader YouTube channel,
don't forget to subscribe.
I plugged a microwave in, which is ridiculous. I plugged
just to make a point.
Just to be let's cook some popcorn. When we're out, we were out in this beautiful little woodsy area.
That's so funny.
But it's so cool. And the other thing that you can do with it, if you are a, quote unquote, you're doing real truck stuff with it, with that 7.2 kilowatt inverter, as well as the 9.2 kilowatt or 9.7 that you can get with the all electric F-150, it has a NEMA, whatever the twist lock outlet that you need to plug in a camper trailer, like if you went to a campsite, like a powered site, it has that outlet in the bed of the truck. So you can precondition your trailer while you're towing it to whatever campsite that you're going to. So you can keep the air conditioning on, you can have your fridge loaded up, keep that beer cold, and you get to the campsite, you plug it in, you don't have to wait for everything to kind of,
so nice.
It's amazing.
What a great feature to have.
And Ford claims that it does not, that energy draw will not affect the engine performance in terms of like your torque when you're towing.
Because it's a separate system, right?
Yeah, because it's an inverter, so it's just like it draws that power, and it's not like you're running it. It's not an accessory being run off the engine.
Right.
It uses the battery pack, and it won't affect the performance of the truck itself.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to go over the pros and cons of electric trucks. So I know they're not very popular now, but it's kind of obvious that like they will become really popular in the next couple years, I think. And so the pros and cons of electric trucks are very similar to the pros and cons of electric cars.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest limitations would be range. And so if you're a truck owner and you do all the trucky stuff, like you're hauling, you're towing, that will eat into your electric range much, much faster than if you were just driving it without all that stuff.
Yes, 100%.
And then when you're towing with an electric truck, you'll also have to keep in mind how much time you'll need to charge.
Yeah.
But also, if you have a trailer hooked up to your truck, you can't pull into certain charging stations.
Yeah, I've seen some trouble on social media of people trying to charge at we're going to need like pull-through stations, especially, we talked a couple episodes ago about at those en-route service stations across Ontario. They're slowly installing these fast chargers, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I think, the next stage is they're going to be like, oh, these need to be pull-throughs, because when you go to those on-routes, how many times do you see people with their trailers all loaded up and they're, heading out camping? Yeah, if you can't charge, then what's the point?
And especially if your range is just disappearing because of all that added weight, you're going to need to charge.
Because best case, like the F-150, I think it's rated for like 600 kilometers at the top.
Amazing.
Which it's amazing. That's without towing.
Yeah.
So, and I know like a lot of people that go camping go further away from home than that.
Yeah.
So let's say you lose, worst case scenario, let's say that trailer, a 6,000 pound trailer on the back with all of your gear, that you get half of that.
So you're looking at 300 kilometers, which is not going to get you that far.
No.
And especially once you get to your campsite, you're going to need a way back home.
Yeah.
And how are you going to charge when you're at your campsite,
Exactly.
right? So these problems, they exist. I think the infrastructure, like we always talk about how the EV charging infrastructure really needs to improve before EVs become more mainstream and more practical. So just keep that in mind if you're considering an EV truck. There are certain challenges that as a truck driver, you'll experience that other EV drivers won't. So just to keep that in mind. Another thing that I wanted to demystify is all of the one-upmanship that's happening in trucks and
silly it
how
is.
the ratings.
Silly has been the theme of this in at least my half of this podcast.
So how can we explain this? So in the truck industry, automakers love saying stuff like, we have the highest towing capacity, or we have the most amount of torque in a truck in the world. Like they like to make these really big claims.
Yeah.
But when you see those claims as a truck shopper and a truck driver, there's always like a little asterisk that you have to be aware of.
And I think so. The towing capacity is always a good one, because I've had conversations with people over the years where they see, a commercial for a truck and it says, best in class V8 towing, 10,000 pounds, 11,000 pounds. And they're like, great, I'm going to go buy that. So they go buy, let's say an F-150, Platinum, and it's got heated and ventilated and massaging seats and a 23 speaker stereo and all of this stuff. And then when they actually put it to the test, they find out that it's capable of thousands of pounds less than what they saw, because what you're seeing advertised it's that trickiness where you're going to see that number. So let's say it's 11,000 pounds and you see this beautiful, glistening and glinting F-150 Limited with 22-inch alloy wheels and all the fixins. But that towing capacity that's being advertised is actually the single cab, long box, rear wheel drive V8.
It has to be spec'd out in an extremely specific way in order for those claims to be true.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
They just see that number and assume that every truck on the lot has that capacity.
And I kind of put it to the test with not this past year, but last year when I drove the Ram 1500, and Ram has this VIN lookup tool, which is really handy. Ford apparently launched one, and then it quickly went away because I think more people than they expected were finding out bad news. So it like mysteriously disappeared. But Ram still has this VIN lookup tool, so you can look up the exact capacity, both towing and payload, of your truck, the way it was built.
With all the different configurations?
Like, no, because it's your VIN.
Oh, right,
so it's like, the one
the
one that Jodi bought has, this is the capacity. And so I did it with the Ram 1500 that I reviewed and that we used in that comparison last year. And so it, you look at what's advertised and it was like 12,000 pounds. And it was good for like 7,200 pounds because it was decked out with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and that's just something I always want to warn people about because, automakers are in the business of selling trucks, right? Trucks. And as a buyer, you have to be aware of these advertising claims and what they're advertising versus what you're actually getting.
That's always my thing when I talk to people who tow, and my parents are in the market. My dad just retired, and they've for years been bandying about, okay, well, we'll get a bigger trailer, and that probably means a truck. And my dad has asked me about it, and I said to him, well, judging by the trailers that you're looking for, I really do think a heavy duty truck is the way to go, because and there's no kind of definitive rule of thumb for it, but my personal take is that you shouldn't exceed about 60 to 70% of the capacity of your truck. So, just because it says it can tow 11,000 pounds doesn't mean you should buy a trailer that's 11,000 pounds, because you have water tanks, you have your food,
all your stuff, passengers.
There's so much stuff. And like payload, if you have your truck loaded up with, family of 4, the dog, all your stuff in the bed, you max out that payload, that eats into the towing capacity, and tongue weight is also part of that payload calculation. It is a very complex calculation that you need to make, and if you are pushing close to that line with a half-ton truck, step up to a heavy, because here's the other problem. All we're talking about right now is capacity in terms of like, can it tow? The safety side of it is, can it slow down?
And that's why these capacity limits exist, because anything above and beyond what it's rated for, it can become really unsafe.
Very dangerous.
Because that's a lot of weight for those brakes to be able to stop quickly.
It's not, and that's why like that move to a heavy duty truck, the brakes themselves are just bigger.
Yep.
Right? And handling wise, it's going to be, you don't want to have this big, heavy trailer on the back that's, whatever, like 1.5 times the weight of the truck that's towing it. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I'm really, I hate to like go down, that kind of dark avenue. But when I lived in Northern Alberta, I was a reporter at a newspaper, and we often went to collision scenes that involved overloaded campers because, we were on the route to get to Alaska. So a lot of people coming a long way to go check out, the territories and head into Alaska, and a lot of disastrous collisions that I saw because trailers, inexperienced drivers with overloaded trailers it is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, and so like my advice for you would be to really research what your truck's capacity is, but also all of those other factors that you need to account for to make sure you're doing it safely.
Don't settle for, what that advertised number is. Like, confirm it get the build sheet, work with your dealer. Don't just take no, it'll be fine. Like, you really do need to do your due diligence, because the other problem is there's no going back. Like, if you buy that truck and then you find out it doesn't work with the trailer you already own, you can't go back to the dealer and say, I don't want this anymore. You're going to lose, or you're going to lose money, or you sell your trailer. And it's like, and nowadays, all of that stuff is harder and harder to come by.
Yep.
So, you really need to check and double check and triple check that it all makes sense, because safety is number one. And it is those decisions, can become problematic very quickly, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, and that's why I always say that, like, the truck world is very complicated and confusing, because there's so many different factors you have to account for. So do your research, make sure it's safe, and you should be fine. But like, that's really important, and I think a lot of people don't really consider those things. They're like, oh, this truck can do everything. Like, let's just hook up everything, throw in everything, and leave it to the gods. Like, I just don't think that's a smart thing to do. Yeah, so just be careful. That's just our warning. But since you mentioned our Ask an Expert, we have arrived at our Ask an Expert section of the podcast.
I like this section.
So if you have any questions about anything, cars, trucks, pizza, Dan's whole vibe, my whole vibe, whatever, email us at expert@trader.ca. And we'll try to answer a couple of your questions in each episode. This time we have 2 questions. One is about trucks.
Okay.
So Steven asks, I currently drive a 2017 Ford F-150 Crew Cab 4x4 V8 and have noticed a significant dent into my budget due to the rising fuel costs. I'm considering downsizing into a 2022 Toyota RAV4 hybrid. Do you think this is a good choice, or would you recommend something else?
I mean, the RAV4 hybrid is amazing.
So first of all, I love the RAV4 hybrid because it is built in Ontario. It's built locally, super efficient, has all-wheel drive. Will it do the same thing as your F-150 truck? No. But
also, Steven seems to have hit that, kind of realization that we were talking about, where it's like, do I need a truck? No. And if it's gas prices that are pushing you, Steven, into that decision, like, good on you. But if you do need the truck, consider the other side of what I said earlier, where when people rush to buy trucks when gas was cheap, don't sell it just because gas is cheap for a little bit. Gas is expensive for a little bit, because if
it'll come back.
And if prices drop, and then you go, oh man, like, I did need that truck after all, because the RAV4 hybrid can't tow. It can only, I don't even know, it can tow like maybe a few thousand pounds.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do the same stuff. So just know that, I personally think it's a great move if it works for you, but again, just don't make it in haste. And also know that getting your hands on a RAV4 hybrid right now is very difficult. Toyota just can't build them
because
the
demand for hybrids is so high right now because of the high gas prices. I think there's a lot of other people in your similar shoes, right?
But even before that, production has been
so
hard.
Good.
Yeah,
it's such an excellent vehicle.
Demand is high, and so.
But luckily, I mean, if you were going to sell your F-150, like, it's a good time to do it. You're going to get top dollar for that truck.
Absolutely. You post that on Trader, and I guarantee you will.
It'll go quickly.
Oh yeah.
So I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-up, Steve, again, you can email us again at expert@trader.ca. Our next question has to do with, it's very particular to you and I.
Okay. Oh.
So Maroon asks, I currently own a 2013 Volkswagen Passat TDI manual, where I get about 950 kilometers in city driving and around 1,200 on the highway. I'm not ready to replace it yet for several reasons. I can't see myself driving an automatic car because it's extremely boring. And I believe I can still get 3 to 4 years out of the car. Currently have around 165,000 kilometers on it, and I drive around 15,000 kilometers a year. I spend approximately $1,800 a year on maintenance. When would be the time to actually get another car?
Not now.
Knowing full well we will be changing to EVs by 2030, my next car will have to be electric. So first of all, Dan and I both drive manual diesel Volkswagens.
Yes.
And I also plan on driving mine until it is dead.
Yes.
I
would say that, I mean, obviously I don't know the condition of this Passat, but if it's that low mileage, 165,000 kilometers on the odometer, keep driving it.
Also, those diesel engines are so robust. It'll go forever.
I would stick with that thing. Diesel prices are it's very expensive right now, but like, you're also getting incredible economy.
Yeah, so it kind of evens out, right?
Yeah.
So I know it's not as affordable to drive as it once was, as we both know. We're both crying every time we have to fill up our cars. But I would say drive it until it dies, or when the cost for maintenance outweighs your savings.
Totally. Like even now, that $1,800 a year for maintenance is a little on the high side, in my opinion. That seems to be a little expensive because, oil changes are more expensive for a diesel.
Yeah,
but
and then the DEF and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, this one is a 2013, so it wouldn't use it.
Oh, so it doesn't even have that, yeah.
So I would say if you're comfortable, with that cost, I would wait. I would try to get another 5 years out of that car because at that point you are going to, if you said it and you're smart to say like your next vehicle is going to be electric, great.
Yeah.
The market then is going to be even better than it is now. There's going to, and hey, wait a minute, 5 years from now, that's 2027. So, and what was Nissan's target with the solid state battery?
2028.
So try to stretch it 6 years.
Yeah.
And you could, find yourself in a very, like a long range electric vehicle with all kinds of cool, I really think, I said it in the Kia EV6 review that I just finished, and it should be up on the site soon. The tide is turning. This is the moment where it's like the cascade is just starting to hit, where we're about to be flooded with some amazing electric vehicles. Yep,
different body styles, different budgets, lots of range. Like the tech is just getting better and better.
So I would try to ride this out for another 5 or 6 years.
As long as you can. And basically, it's just when the maintenance starts requiring you to change big things that become really expensive.
Of course.
That's when you kind of want to think about, swapping out to another
car. I'm speaking pretty ideally here. If everything continues to go the way it is, I'm in that boat where I have, my Golf wagon. It has 127,000 kilometers on it. It's the 2014. And I plan to drive it as long as I possibly can. Yeah, same. Mine's a 2015 Golf TDI. Yours uses DEF, though. Mine uses DEF, and so I have about 170,000 kilometers on it. So basically, one jug of the DEF lasts me like a year or something like that. And we're, Jodi and I are lucky that we don't drive our cars as often as the average person because we're driving a lot of press vehicles. So I might put a few thousand kilometers on I think I put 5,000 on it over 2 years. Oh, that's nothing. Yeah. That's amazing. So anyway, thank you for your question. We hope that kind of helps. Yeah, I hope that helps. That question is very dear to our hearts. Yes. Yes. But if any of you had questions, please email us at expert@trader.ca. Yep. But we're also looking for Father's Day submissions. Oh yeah, Father's Day is around the corner. So Father's Day is in mid-June or something like that, and we're going to be coming out with a new podcast episode specifically for Father's Day. I think the week before Father's Day. Yes. And so we would love to hear your stories about your dads. Any car-related stuff, that's obviously, we're talking on the road here, but it's road trips, cars, maybe some cool project that you built with your dad, something that your dad taught you that's still with you to this day, just anything that, stands out in your mind, please let us know. Please email us, because we really want to share that kind of stuff. We just think it's cool, and I love being able to amplify other people's voices.
Yeah, we want to hear your stories.
Yeah.
And we're going to pick a couple to read on our next episode. But yeah, if you have any fun memories with your dad or a father figure in your life, any fun wisdom that you wanted to share that was passed down to you, anything like that, we would love to hear them and read them on our next episode. We're going to have my dad on the episode.
We're going to have my dad on the episode.
And so you're going to learn a lot about why we're here today.
Well, we're getting into that stuff, eh?
I mean, birds and bees and stuff.
Birds and bees.
But
Jodi.
this is On the Road. It's a car podcast, so we're gonna try to stay on topic.
Yes, please.
But yeah, if you have dad stories, please email us at expert@trader.ca. I cannot wait to hear your dad stories.
Yeah, you can also let us know on Facebook if that's more your jam.
Yeah, you could DM us on Instagram. I think the email is probably the best way to go.
Yes, please do.
But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 4 of On the Road with AutoTrader. We're really looking forward to the next episode.
And
don't forget to subscribe and
rate the podcast.
Yeah, if you rate it, it kind of bumps it up and more people will see it.
Yep.
Which is always what we want.
Absolutely. And also, keep on trucking.
Keep on trucking, y'all. See you next time.